Are you interested in publishing a book, but you don't know where to start? Today, I'm talking all about the different paths to publication. Hi guys, I'm Lenn Woolston. I'm a writer, blogger, and nerd, and thanks for checking out my channel today. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos. I post my writing related videos on Friday, and I'd love to see more of you. So today we're going to be talking about all the different paths to publication. After you get your manuscript all ready to go and you're deciding what you want to do with it, it can be so overwhelming trying to kind of figure out what are the steps from taking this manuscript and making it into a published book. So I'm going to be talking about different paths and kind of clear up some terms that maybe you have heard but you're not quite sure of the definition. So let's get to it. The first path that I'm going to talk about, which is the classic path that a lot of people know, is traditional publishing. So what exactly is traditional publishing? Well, a traditionally published author usually has an agent that works on their behalf to kind of represent them and their work, and they pitch their manuscript of their author to publishers. And this usually happens at the big publishers, which are known as the Big Five. So what exactly are the Big Five? Well, let me break it down for you. So the Big Five publishing houses are like HarperCollins, Macmillan, Hachette, Penguin Random House, and Simon & Schuster. So those are the Big Five because they kind of produce the most volume and they get a lot of exposure because they have the big budgets, which makes them big. So if you go the traditionally published route, you'll have an agent who will be, like I said, pitching your work to editors at the publishing houses. And once you have that contract, what you're doing is you're basically selling your rights to your work over to the publisher, but you always keep your copyright. And then there are other things that are like negotiable, like what happens to like film rights and like international rights and etc. Like those are all just kind of like sprinkled in there for like an additional thing, but those kind of get negotiated, which happens with your agent. I kind of like to think an agent kind of like a real estate agent, where you're hiring this person to basically be the liaison between you and that publisher. And so they work on your behalf, which means that they don't get paid unless you get paid, in a sense. So what that means is a lot of them work on commission, which again means that if you don't get a publishing deal, they don't get paid. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons of traditionally publishing. So one of the pros is that you have a potentially bigger scale when it comes to publishing because they're at a publishing house that is larger. So you also possibly will be getting a paid advance, which is a small chunk of money that you get before your book is even published. And you also, more importantly, have a team that supports you on getting published. Some of the cons are it's really competitive to find one of those agents who kind of some people associate as being gatekeepers, if you will, because they kind of are how you get your foot in the door. The other con is that it's timely. Being traditionally published means that it takes a lot longer for you to get your book into the hands of readers. And another con is you don't get as much creative control. So usually, like I was saying, you have a team that support you. When it comes to like your cover design, you're not really designing it because you have a team of people that are working for you, and they may get your input, but again, they're going to go with what is going to be the most marketable. Now let's talk all about small press publishing. So with a small press, there is no representation for your work. You will instead be working with an editor at that small press who will be kind of helping you get your manuscript all ready to go in the best condition that it can be. And from there, the small press, if you will, kind of does an investment in you. And so they will front kind of the up cost of having to publish your book in the hopes that you will be making book sales, and they will take a percentage of that. So again, you're handing over the rights to your work, but again, keeping your copyright. And all those little things that I talked about that are negotiable, like those film rights and international rights and all of that, that is something that you negotiate with the small press itself. So an example of a small press is exactly where I'm interning at, which is VA Vera Publishing, and I'll have a link down below so you can kind of see what they're all about. But again, it's like having just the straight shot to a publisher, but it's on a smaller scale. So let's talk some of the pros and cons of publishing with a small press. So as far as the pros go, you get more creative control. Generally speaking, a small press is going to want your input on what you want the cover to be, what kind of marketing plan you want to establish. And so they're definitely able to include you in that kind of marketability, and also just kind of taking your ideas and then putting them into a more concise plan and that you get to be a part of. Also, a huge pro with being with a small press is, again, that they're more personable. So usually you're working with a smaller team of people, and so you kind of get more personal with them. They know you and they know your vision and everything, and then they're also really excited about it, and so they want to see that happen with your novel. Another great pro is that typically when it comes to publication, the time to kind of get your manuscript all ready to getting that book into the hands of readers is shorter than if you were to go, let's say, the traditionally published route. Now, there are some cons, which I see as being with a small press means that they have fewer publication connections, meaning that they're not going to be pitching your idea to the big five because they're going to be publishing it themselves. Typically, another con is that you don't get an advance when it comes to working with a small press, and another con being that because they're a small press, they have a smaller budget for things like marketing. Another path to publication, which is growing in popularity, is self-publishing. So this means that you are publishing the work on your behalf. So it's without having to sell your rights to anybody. You get to keep all of the rights and obviously the copyright, and there's no negotiations to go over or anything because you're the one doing the work. So let's talk about some of those pros. So some of the pros of self-publishing are that you get complete creative control. So when it comes to what your cover looks like, guess what? You're the one that gets to decide that. You also, as a pro, you get to decide when your publication date is going to be. So whether or not you want to kind of do like in a year from now, 2 years from now, or 3 months from now, that's completely up to you. The other huge pro is that you do not have to query anyone because you're not looking for representation from anybody else, so you don't even have to worry about writing a dang query letter. However, it does come with some cons. So some of them are that you have to be fulfilling a lot of roles when it comes to publishing. And that can be overwhelming for a lot of people because you are not only the writer, you're also the marketing manager, you're also the editor, you're also the graphic designer, and all of those things when it comes to publishing, guess what? They fall in your hands. The other con is that you can possibly have limited funds because you're working by yourself, which means there will be no advance for you. Another con is that it's competitive. It's competitive out there because you have to think about your book is also going to be on the shelves either electronically or in stores with books that are traditionally published. Another path to publication is to be a hybrid author. So what exactly does that mean? Well, an author who's a hybrid author is an author who decides to publish in 2 or more different publication formats. So for example, you can have an author who maybe is traditionally published doing like a young adult fantasy series, but then they decide that they want to self-publish a children's series that they just decided that they're going to do on their own. They have kind of already a following from being traditionally published, and then they want to do something that's completely different on the side that they are going to self-publish. Another popular trend for hybrid authors is that you may have an author who is traditionally published who does fiction, but then they want to self-publish nonfiction or vice versa. Either way, it's an author who decides that they are going to have different kinds of lines of work that are published in a traditional sense and then in a self-published or an indie sense. So what is indie publishing? Well, that term is very subjective. If you ask people in the writing community, what does indie mean? You'll probably get different answers when it comes to that. And it's because indie is short for independent. Now, you can look at it that it's an author who is published either self-published or an author who is through a small press, or it can be a hybrid of those two. But when it comes to indie, it's meaning independent, which it basically boils down to the fact that they're not involved with the big 5 publishers that I mentioned. So now that you have a better understanding as to all the different paths there are to publication, you're probably asking, well, wait, which one of those is right for me? This is where it gets very tricky because it all comes down to what you want to do. It's completely up to you. However, I will say that there are a few things to consider. Number 1 is do your research. I cannot emphasize that enough, that you need to research all these different paths to decide which one is right for you. And I do want to give this disclaimer that if you have an agency or an editor, somebody claiming that they're going to help you with you and your publication, you should never be required to invest money up front. So if there's a reading fee or something that is similar to that, where they're saying if you send in this money, then we will publish your book, huge red flag. Don't do it. It is very likely that you are just about to get scammed and won't get your book published. So make sure you do your research with who you want to be involved with on the different paths to publication. The second is to ask yourself the following questions. What are your career goals for publishing? Do you want your book featured in major bookstores all over and go on book tours, or are you wanting something more simpler as just having your book in print that you're willing to just sell to your friends and family? And ask yourself, when you envision what it means to you to be a published author, what does that mean in essence of what path you want to take? Because you need to decide which path will get you to those goals and those career aspirations that you want, and kind of defining what steps you need to take. The third and final thing to consider is that it's more of a statement here in saying that no matter which path you choose, you will be a published author. Don't let people minimize your success and say that you must take this way over that way to be a published author. Each has its pros and its cons. However, at the end of the day, once your book is up for sale, you are a published author. So there you have it. Hopefully now you have a better scope to knowing all the different paths that it is to publication. And there's so many more ways that I didn't have the chance to mention, but I tried to keep the basic understanding of all these different paths that you can take from getting that manuscript into a book for your readers. Now, I do want to say thank you so much for joining me on this, and I hope you have learned something, and I really want to know, what path are you taking? Let me know in the comment section down below. I will say that I am on my own path, my own journey to be traditionally published, and it's a long road, and like I said, it's competitive and everything, but when I really established what my goals were, I knew that that was the path that was going to take me to be able to be, in my eyes, successful. So I'm still on that path. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. If you have any ideas of what you would like to see me do a video on, also drop that down in the comment section below. And until next video, guys, bye!